Just let it out, buddy. That's right.
With SpongeBob Squarepants being a comedy series, most of its episodes are made to entertain us, to serve as an escape from the hellhole that our reality can really be. Although lots of its episodes have some sort of message in them, SpongeBob typically has one goal and one goal only: to make folks laugh. But what happens when SpongeBob approaches the exact opposite of the spectrum, where it would throw all jokes out the window in favor of telling a much more realistic, surprisingly sad story? You get Have You Seen the Snail? One of the most divisive episodes in all of SpongeBob SquarePants. Many people love this episode for its genuinely heartbreaking story and extremely realistic portrayal of someone whose pet had run away from them, while others don't like it nearly as much for those exact same reasons. When I was a kid, it was one of those episodes that I wasn't sure on what to think of it. All that I knew was that the episode was just a touch too sad for me at the time. And it was definitely not what I was looking for in an episode of SpongeBob. After many years of me not having seen it, I decided to give it another shot to answer a question that I've had for the longest time. Did this episode get a little too real? The episode begins with SpongeBob receiving a package. He opens it up and finds a Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy paddleball set with the included challenge of beating the Dirty Bubbles' ludicrous record. Because his loyalty and respect knows no boundaries for his two heroes, SpongeBob accepts the challenge, putting all of his dedication into it while neglecting everything else. Unfortunately, that does also include feeding and paying attention to his beloved snail, Gary. After trying to get SpongeBob's attention, failing horribly and even getting yelled at, Gary reluctantly decides that his best friend no longer has any interest in him anymore and runs away from his home, now on a new adventure, finding a new place to stay. Meanwhile, SpongeBob manages to complete the challenge and would soon realize that Gary has left him behind over it. He partners up with Patrick to go look for him, while Gary finds himself an old lady who takes him in and takes care of him, now realizing that said old lady has a certain craving for snails that seemingly cannot be satiated.
Oh dear. Oh, the meatloaf's not quite ready yet, but Grandma knows how hungry you are, Miss Tuftsy. So she whipped up a quick batch of cookies.
Much of the episode's story is spent with SpongeBob looking for his beloved snail, accompanied by him crying a fair bit along the way. Meanwhile, Gary is being fed until he is ready to presumably get cooked. This story is one kind of foreign to SpongeBob in a lot of ways. It's a formula that we haven't really seen that much up to this point, or even since. In fact, in my recent memory, I can really only think of one other instance that this kind of plot was utilized. Sponge on the Run took a stab at the concept, but that plotline was kind of buried in SpongeBob and Patrick's wacky shenanigans. Have You Seen the Snail is one of the very few episodes on the show where it tells a surprisingly sad story like this for a SpongeBob episode with earnesty and respect. Both sides of the story are being portrayed in a way that SpongeBob knows how to portray really well. Gary is being seen very comfortable with his new owner, while SpongeBob is sad and miserable over potentially losing his best friend forever. Now, we have seen SpongeBob going through some sad episodes. This is not the first time Gary left him, nor is this the first time we ever saw him cry. However, there was something genuinely heartbreaking about this one particular time. It's rare that SpongeBob ever tackles a real subject matter like this, and even when it does happen, it's often very overly exaggerated. It's often paired with a ton of visual gags and jokes. Most of the time, they also have a message of sorts in them that they teach kids by showing a very real scenario that lesson could be applied to. The big difference with those episodes, however, is that, like I said, they are often overly exaggerated. And they are not subject matters nearly as sad as something like this. This time, the story is told much more realistically, SpongeBob's emotions are far more genuine, the humor is barely existent, and the few jokes that are here are very brief and not especially funny. The pain that SpongeBob has to go through here is far more real and depressing than anything else we have ever seen from the series. To the point where it almost becomes more than a bit jarring to see. SpongeBob Squarepants is usually not the kind of show that goes this hard to make a character go through this much misery. That is not to say that it just doesn't happen. There have been other episodes in later seasons, like Are You Happy Now?, where Squidward had actual depression. That was also handled in a very realistic manner, if a bit exaggerated. However, that scene did not go on for a very long time. It was a fairly brief moment in that particular episode. Here, SpongeBob's misery goes on for a very big chunk of the episode. It pretty much takes up all of the episode's runtime. And here, none of SpongeBob's emotions are exaggerated in any way. They are very intentionally made to be as realistic as humanly possible, to make the audience actually cry right alongside SpongeBob. It honestly is quite impressive that SpongeBob of all shows could ever evoke this kind of emotion from me, or anyone for that matter. This is one of the very few episodes that actually managed to get me to shed a couple of tears while watching it. But it also spawns a question for me and to some others. That is, of course, the question of, can SpongeBob go too far in being real? Well, I say we break this down one by one. I said before that it is genuinely impressive that SpongeBob is able to make kids and adults alike feel a wide variety of emotions, and even make them cry once in a while. Mainly because this kind of show still has this stigma around it, that it's more loud noises, flashy animation, and very little morals, or even a realistic approach towards what real life is actually like. Episodes like this do prove that even SpongeBob can get very real, and in the process, incredibly sad. However, whether or not it should do that is highly debatable, as this is not typically the kind of show that you would go to see this kind of saddening scenario play out. Although it certainly has some jokes in it, there are not really that many of them, and the ones that are there didn't really get a chuckle out of me personally. But this episode clearly is far more interested in telling a story than it is about telling jokes. A perfect example of this can be found in the song that plays in the middle of it. Not only is Gary Come Home incredibly unique and beautifully sung, it also is very foreign to SpongeBob. Much like the story in general. Most songs we hear on this show are very upbeat and fun to listen to, and it's not often that they convey sadness through them, but when they do hit incredibly hard.
More than a pet, you're my best friend, too cool to forget. Come back, cause we are family, and forgive me for making you wanna roam. And now my heart is beating like the saddest metronome.
Gary Come Home is no exception to that rule. It perfectly conveys just how sad SpongeBob feels throughout it, and I cannot lie to you, it still gets me every time I hear it. It's just damn powerful.
Your meow right now would sound like music to me. Please come home, cause I miss you, Gary.
Again, we don't see moments like these very often on the show, which makes sequences like this all the more powerful and emotional when they do happen. I would certainly be lying if I said that I didn't have any tears in my eyes when I rewatched this episode for this video. It was beautiful, it was powerful, and hits very close to home. That being said, as much respect as I have for it, I do have some critiques against it. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Being alive is hard. Life can be mundane, stressful, painful, and even angering. For many of us, after a rough day from either school or work, what we need is an escape. We need to get ourselves immersed in a world that we can thoroughly get invested in, or to even just have a good laugh at something silly or fun. However, Have You Seen the Snail seems to have been made with a very different goal in mind. It's telling a story that feels very relatable, as this is a scenario that many of us have gone through. in a very realistic manner. It portrays just how someone feels when their pet gets lost. You may not know you'll ever see him again, or if he's gone forever. This wouldn't be the last time that SpongeBob took a stab at this idea, as a couple of seasons later they would try their hands at the same thing with Are You Happy Now? An episode that revolves around Squidward developing what looks like a really bad depression. Some folks have opinions on that particular episode, which I understand. But I still respect that episode, for it seems to understand what a real person with depression actually goes through and visualizes it in a respectful manner that both kids and adults will understand. On a similar level as Have You Seen the Snail? It's clear that there is an audience for these sorts of episodes on a show like SpongeBob. There is no shortage of people who have seen these and really liked it for what they were trying to do and for what they accomplished. Some folks like it when SpongeBob takes on a more realistic subject matter like losing a pet or depression in a respectful manner, and I have to agree. I do understand how something like this appeals to audiences. As much as audiences come to this sort of show for the entertainment aspect, there will also be no shortage of audiences who come to this for validation. They want to get a good sense that someone out there sees their situation, that they understand it, and they want a reminder that they are not alone. I've talked about this exact thing in Pixar animated movies for the lonely, where lonely folks often find themselves seeking for some piece of media that makes them feel understood, heard, and supported. This exact audience would find appeal in episodes like Are You Happy Now and Have You Seen the Snail for that exact same reason. They're relatable and portray real subject matters in the only way that Pixar knows best. SpongeBob is a very different kind of medium. It's a comedy series, a series that was designed from the ground up to entertain and to make its audience laugh at the wacky characters and the world they live in. A show that folks come to as an escape from reality. Shows like this are usually not what you come to if you want to feel something. Other shows like The Legend of Aang fill that role much better in my opinion, because it actually takes the subject matter of war and the effects that it has in a very powerful manner. If you're looking for this, SpongeBob is just not the kind of show you would often go to. With that being said, we have already established that there is still an audience for these stories within SpongeBob. It's clear that some folks do want to see episodes like this to exist, and I do also believe that they should exist. As much as I question SpongeBob taking on these subject matters in the way that they do, I cannot overlook the fact that they speak to many folks on a very personal level. It's the exact reason why my favorite episode of the whole show is Pickles, which is an episode about SpongeBob having severe anxiety over one tiny little mistake he made, causing his entire brain to go out of whack. Which is a very real thing that many folks on the autism spectrum, like yours truly, go through relatively often. And once again, SpongeBob managed to portray it really well, if a bit exaggerated. Episodes like this, as well as Have You Seen the Snail? Are You Happy Now? Dumped, and even some of the more comedic ones like Sailor Mouth and Graveyard Shift are all in a similar bubble of being very relatable to many viewers. I personally do think that Have You Seen the Snail and Are You Happy Now go a little too far with making their story feel as real as possible, making them both pretty damn sad to watch. But I still have a lot of respect for them for what they do, as well as the show's writers for going above and beyond the Call of Duty to make the audience feel and even cry at times. And I am also not alone on this.
Hello, this is Strider.
Hey Strider, this is Koen. So, this is a bit of a weird question, but how do you feel about SpongeBob discussing heavy subject matters?
That's a very good question, Koen. If you have a minute, I'd gladly share my thoughts with you.
Yeah, of course. Do tell.
Well, I think it all comes down to how the show handles these heavy subjects. Like, Have You Seen the Snail and Are You Happy Now have done. How do the audiences respond to these episodes? Did they handle the subjects with respect? is it entertaining? I do strongly believe that SpongeBob can and should tackle heavier subject matter from time to time, but I think the key to making this work is knowing how to sugar the pill. I mean, SpongeBob's done this since the very beginning, where they would talk about a number of serious topics like addiction, anxiety, depression, and the loss of a loved one by balancing the show's usual wacky and light nature with some of the more slow, serious moments. For example, the Season 2 episode Squid's Day Off handles the subject of OCD really well.
To stay here and enjoy myself. I'm not even gonna think about you-know-who and the you-know-what doing I don't care. Just gonna relax.
It goes right through the mental thought process of someone struggling with OCD checking, while still being relatable, understandable to neurotypical people, and making viewers laugh along the way. Similarly, in Have You Seen the Snail, there are a decent number of jokes in there.
What are those Neanderthals up to? Don't they know I'm busy spoiling myself?
Even the reason SpongeBob gets distracted from Gary is hard to take too seriously, with his silly dirty bubble challenge.
I hereby accept your challenge.
I strongly believe that any subject matter can and should be talked about, especially in a show like Spongy that teaches good morals to kids. I hear Have You Seen the Snail has a lot of fans in the cartoon community, and I do definitely see the value, but personally I prefer something a little lighter than this. Whenever I watch it nowadays, it's kind of a bummer. A long bummer as well. I give this episode like full 22 minutes. And frankly, SpongeBob, I'd never forget to feed my cat for a week long. That's insane, dude. But I do respect episodes like Have You Seen the Snail for talking about a serious subject with the respect and care it deserves. I hope my perspective was helpful, Koen. Feel free to leave a message after the beep. Beep!
In conclusion, Strider and I both think that episodes like this have their place on SpongeBob, even if it isn't what we typically look for. There is something genuinely powerful about episodes like Have You Seen the Snail going as hard as it does to tell a story that makes you feel emotions, even if those emotions are sadness rather than happiness. I know I went into a bit of a rabbit hole for this video, but I found this whole discussion really fascinating and just wanted to dedicate a video of my own to it to share my own thoughts on the matter. This is a very tough one to grapple because there is just so much to it. And the problem with a rabbit hole is that it just goes on and on beyond infinity, which would eventually lead to me rambling on for a while before I finally go insane. Before we end off this video, I want to give one tremendous shout out to PhantomStrider, who was kind enough to lend me his voice for this video. It has been amazing having him on Koen's Corner and getting his perspective on this topic. He was a true delight to work with, and if you're interested in seeing more of him, I highly recommend you check him out over on YouTube. He makes some amazing videos about cartoons, food, mental health, and self-care. Also, if you would be okay with me rambling a bit about random topics, please let me know what you would like to see on Koen's Corner next. There's a lot of stuff I could be rambling about, like I did for this video, but I also would be curious to know what you would be interested in seeing on the show. With that being said, my time to sign out has now come. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day, creators. Unite.